Hi, Gretos. Welcome back again to our English lessons with Miss Lichuti, and then we are going to go out directly to Act 2, Scene 3 of My Children, My Africa. From the monologue where Mr. M was wandering around, trying to find his way to maneuver around the chaos, being that boycotting of classes and the riots to get to class, we are now at the climax of the play, which reveals a lot about the main theme of the book or the main theme of the play, as well as character development, and also just to get to realize the essence of the relationship between Mr. M and Tammy. Now, without any waste of time, let us look at the outline for the scene. Right, I've got quite a number of bulletins here, and I need to go through all of them because the thing is quite important. Mr. M is alone in number one classroom. It means that he did manage to get to school, as we have seen him in the previous scene in his monologue where he was trying to maneuver around the riot to go to school. And what is important is that he rings the bell wildly. He takes the roll call to check if his learners are present, but however, he uses the word dead or alive, given because of the boycott and the riots that are happening outside. Some, of course, will be injured, some, unfortunately, will be dead. Now, Tammy enters and orders Mr. M to stop ringing the bell. Mr. M compares the dictionary to the stones, right? He gives the dictionary to Tammy, but he refuses to take it. Tammy informs Mr. M that he was accused of being an informer. And this is not the first time Mr. M or Tammy divulged this information. When during their heated argument, where Tammy expressed that he is abandoning the literature quiz and he is indeed joining the comrades, he did mention that to Mr. M that during their heated exchange of words that the comrades do know, they even call him that he's licking the white man's ass in the context of the book or of the play. And then again, Tammy reiterates what he already said to Mr. M to make him aware that the comrades call him a sellout and that he's an informant. The comrades are going to burn the school down. They want to kill Mr. M. Mr. M admits to providing the police with names. Mr. M wants to end the violence and lawlessness. He is also jealous of people who had taken Tammy away from him. Mr. M explains how the world is wasting his children, his Africa. This is the title again. Mr. M goes outside, ringing the bell, and is indeed killed. Now, it opens up with Mr. M standing alone in his classroom. The significance of number one classroom, it's where we came across Mr. M at the beginning, and then unfortunately, when he met his demise, we're still going to meet him again in this number one classroom. It plays a significant role. Mr. M vigorously rings the bell, as we already says, and calls out the names of his learners, but then they say dead or alive. And what is important is that by ringing his school bell and calling out his students, Mr. M desperately tries to replicate the sense of order and safety that he used to feel while teaching. So by ringing the bell to him is one way. Remember, he says that somebody needs to stop this madness. So in him, the significance of ringing the bell is that he wants to reinstate order and perhaps try to save the souls that are outside by bringing them back to school. He feels that he has failed in his mission to protect his students, and this leads to him to question whether his lifelong faith in wonderful words, meaning that believing in education, believing in the power of words, or learning and persuasion as means to political change, has been misplaced. Suddenly, stones break through the classroom window. Distraught, Mr. M concludes that one of his students must be alive. He rings his bell and yells out for them to come to school. Then Tammy, of course, enters. He tells Mr. M not to ring his bell. The comrades see it as a provocation or as a means of defiance because Mr. M is going against the boycott. Mr. M says that he'll maintain the school schedule and keep ringing the bell every day. This response, it clearly shows that Mr. M is somehow out of touch with reality, as we've already stated in the previous scene, until the word comes to its senses. Mr. M asks if Tammy is at school to learn, but when Tammy says no, Mr. M remarks that there's not much revolutionary could benefit from learning in school. Mr. M holds a stone in one hand and his dictionary in the other hand. He declares that the stone is merely one word, whereas the dictionary contains the entire English language, which the great writers Tammy and Isabel were studying, dedicated their lives to exploring. The dictionary is one of Mr. M's oldest books, and he tries to give it to Tammy, who refuses and explains that his coming is a warning not to learn in class, but Mr. M says that he knows that and Tammy is wasting his time. Tammy explains that he's not just warning Mr. M about ringing the school bell, rather the comrades have reported that he's a police informant, like he's leaking information and he's in immediate danger. The people are planning to burn down the school and kill Mr. M. The only way Mr. M can survive is by publicly apologizing, renouncing his association with the school, and joining the boycott movement. And this was advised by Tammy to say the only way for you to get out, because Mr. M was saying, what is that then I should do? And then he said, go and apologize and join the movement. But Mr. M isn't sure. He doesn't think it's possible to reason with an angry mob. This also is interesting because Tammy tries to intervene and stop Mr. M's breakdown. As a result of the riot, Tammy and Mr. M's roles are reversed, because most of the time we see Mr. M being authoritative, giving advices and instruction to Tammy, and Tammy using what you call a top-down approach. A top-down approach is when you don't give the individual that you are instructing an opportunity to also state or divulge or share their emotions or state of mind. But however, what you do, you just give instruction, and what they need to do is just to comply and keep quiet. But in this scene, it was interesting to find that, or to notice that the roles shifted here, where we see now Tammy instructing Mr. M. For example, telling Mr. M what to do, telling Mr. M that the best way to remedy the situation at hand is to go to the mob and to apologize and then join the comrades so that his life can be saved. So indeed, Mr. M tries but fails to maintain his position of authority here in this scene, and Tammy ends up becoming responsible for his teacher's safety. This shows that despite all their conflict in the past, Tammy still cares deeply about Mr. M's well-being. In fact, Tammy and Mr. M's ability to care for each other despite their disagreements suggests that it's possible to heal deep political divides, like the one that separates black and white in South Africa, and that which is the apartheid regime. So remember, what the author will do will use the storyline and what characters go through, not only to explore what characters go through, but also to try to weave in what they were experiencing also within the circumstances or the conditions that they were living in, that which they were living during the apartheid system. So everything, all these pressures, all these conflicts, they are nothing but a product of a system that was so unjust or unfair to the black community, given its laws of inequality, this laws of oppression. So with that said, we see a beautiful relationship being broken down because of the pressures, where Tammy turned his back against school, and we can't fault him, because at the end of the day, the system or the education system that was provided for blacks were not of a good quality. So this was quite a touching scene, and then which further explores the theme of the effects of apartheid in the young South Africans, where the youth deemed it necessary to boycott classes to join the comrades in order to bring an end to the apartheid and Bantu education. And then also the theme of words versus violence. Mr. M believes that using words is the best way to bring political and social change in education, and then he believes that violence using stones is not the way to. And the dictionary and figurative expression here, Mr. M speaks of a mob and Tammy speaks of comrades. These terms refer to the same people but used differently. In figurative language, or rather a paradox it means when two contradictory ideas are placed in one sentence. If you say, um, this is a very beautiful house, yet dirty. The first picture that you painted is that of a beautiful house, which is positive, but once you say yet dirty, now the dirtiness brings the negativity, which now forms what you call a paradox, which is two contradictory ideas stated in the same sentence. So that can also be a paradox, being that Tammy refers to the people as comrades who were defying the apartheid system, but then Mr. M calls them a mob. Then a lot of well-aimed stray bullets. This is seemingly absurd or contradictory statement again uttered by Mr. M, which further shows his attitude towards comradeship. And what I also said that Mr. M in this scene again tells Tammy about the trip to Wapat, is it Wapasbeck on page 94. I can't remember the place exactly. Please check page 94, where he was inspired to become a teacher. He takes Tammy back to his sort of reminiscing about his roots. And then Mr. M's teacher encouraged him to take the journey to Africa through reading. Mr. M tells the story of an Ethiopian tribesman poverty in Africa, and then he further laments that the world wastes the future of the children of Africa, hence the title My Children, My Africa. Now, the significance of number one classroom, as I've stated in the beginning of the lesson, is that in a literal sense, remember in literature we've got literal meaning and figurative meaning. Please check one of my old videos I did on figures of speech to know the difference between literal and figurative. Literal meaning, which is the actual number one classroom. This is the setting place. But then the figurative, it means that the symbolic representation of the class is the best academic group of learners, the A class or top achievers, because that's where we got to see talent being brewed, and the perfect example of that, of course, is going to be Tammy. Now, the significance of the bell, right? I didn't want to say much about the bell because I wanted to get to the slide first. Why did forget who's the author start and end the scene with Mr. M ringing the bell? Remember, he rang the bell in the beginning to as a way to summon the children and to save them, to bring them to school. But also remember, it's part of who he is as an orderly man who is principled. But again, there's another significance of the bell. So the start of the scene, Mr. M rings the bell to call the learners to school. He wants to protect them from the danger and death, as he knows that these riots and protests might lead to their death. But then the ending of the scene, Athol Fugate wants to show us that Mr. M is not afraid to die. He does this by letting Mr. M walk out, because remember, Tammy was trying to stop him. At the end, Tammy did not win. He did walk out and continue to ring the bell. And then he does this by letting Mr. M walk out of the number one class to confront the comrades who then eventually kill him. And then the climax of the play, okay? The climax of the play is that despite Tammy's desperate attempt to keep Mr. M from confronting the comrade, Mr. M rebelliously walks straight into his death. This creates the dramatic climax in this scene, and in the drama as a whole. So the death of Mr. M shows one defiance, and then again it shows how rooted he was in his principles, because even in the face of death he was not moved, he was not faced, he was not scared. He died believing and adhering to his principles that indeed words are better than stones, meaning that education is far better than violence. So at the end of the day, in this climax, it was also interesting to note and to see the deep-seated love and care Tammy still had for Mr. M, the same way that Mr. M is passionate about Tammy. And their love is interpreted or seen in a different light, because we see how Tammy risked by rushing to school to save Mr. M in the midst of the riot room. It was a risk on its own, because if the comrade could have seen Tammy trying to save Mr. M, that could have raised eyebrows again to say, you know that your teacher is a informer, he's a spy, sort of a spy, but you still go back to the school. And Tammy being at school alone at that period in time, it was also risky, because remember they were boycotting schools. And then we've got words versus violence. Mr. M, no, don't need me for lesson in stone throwing either. You have already got your teachers in those very revolutionary subjects, haven't you? If you put these two on a scale, I think you will find that they were just about the same. But in this hand, I'm holding the whole English language. That's where he was comparing a stone to a dictionary, and he used them as a symbolic representation to say words are far better and more powerful than stones, which represent violence, and then words are going to represent education and wisdom, of course. And to further analyze that, stones represent violence, stupidity, one word less powerful, as I've already stated, whereas dictionary represent words, knowledge, and intelligence. And of course, we know by now that Mr. M vowed for education first, better than using violence. Now, I want us to look into this statement. Mr. M gave police the name of learners who attended his school. This statement is false, because Mr. M, in his words, says that I sat down in captain office and told him I felt it was my duty to report the presence in our community of strangers from the north. So he was reporting strangers from the north. I told him I had reason to believe that they were behind the present unrest. I gave the captain names and addresses. This statement by Mr. M confirms that he was aware of what was happening in his community, and he was concerned about the well-being of his children, and that his students. Now, why did he give away the names of these strangers? Mr. M felt it was his duty to report. Now, the question is why. These strangers did not reside in the township. They were intruders. They were from the north, not from his community. They were brainwashing and manipulating young children, or his children. They were destroying his community, his children, his Africa. He needed to protect them. Mr. M wanted to put an end to the madness of boycott, mob violence, and lawlessness. And remember, towards the end, he did confess to Tammy that yes, I did give away the names to the police. What was the main reason why that Mr. M went to the police? First of all, Mr. M was missing Tammy. Tammy was like his son. You know, he was really connected and he really loved Tammy. And he did mention that Tammy was his favorite student. So, of course, he went up and beyond to ensure that he safeguarded Tammy. And although his approach, being the old-fashioned way, was too authoritative for Tammy, if he did not give him a chance to also express his fair frustrations, hence their relationship was strained, as we have seen in the scene that we discussed prior this one. He felt Tammy had deserted him. He was also jealous that the comrades took away Tammy from him, and the brilliance protege, most dedicated and bright student. He was angry at the comrades for leaving him with an empty classroom, for taking all his students. He was furious because the comrades have taken his life, his home. His only ambition was to go to school, because remember, he vacillated between two places. It's his room where he rented and the classroom. He did not have much of a life, but his life was entirely dedicated to his students. Mr. M, every African soul is carrying the bundle or in it. What is wrong with this world that it wants to waste you like that? My children, my Africa. Here, Mr. M refers to the suffering of all Africans. They are suffering either because they are victims or they are carrying the victims. But in the context of the play, because given the time frame and what was happening in South Africa at that time, blacks or Africans being blacks in South Africa were subjected to the cruelty of apartheid. But because the manner in which things were resolved, it was not in an amicable or positive way, but it was more like through war. Hence the cry, my children, my Africa. Remember, during the boycott, some were killed, some were in police vans screaming, teacher, teacher, tell my parents that I'm help. So to him to see his world crumble down. And what do you mean his world? Remember, these children, these learners are Mr. M's world. So to see the world, his world crumbling down just before his eyes, hence he even went to make the last attempt by ringing the bell as a gesture to bring them to school to save them. Hence, my children, my Africa. Right, and that would be the end of Act 2, Scene 3. And then in the next video, now we are going to do the last Act 4 and Act 5. And then we will conclude now, my children, my Africa. I hope and believe that the videos are helpful in for you to understand the play. Remember, it's important to understand the play so that you can be in a position to nail that paper or the final paper on Wednesday. Thank you once more.